Welcome to a tradition unlike any other, the 2022 Grip Strip Podcast. Hello, friends. My name is Philip Matthew, and I'm with my co-host Josh Fine here for episode 108 of the Grip Strip Podcast. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. It's a interesting week so far. Glad to see your Jim Nance impression coming back there for the Masters this week. Jim Nance, pretty busy guy. You just did the NCAA men's tournament, and now he's doing the Masters. So, always like to hear his voice, and great impression there by you. But we got a lot of motorsports to talk about and everything. And I will tell you this. I didn't mention this offline, but I rented a Jeep Wrangler this week for my work trip, and it was an interesting experience.
Oh boy, I think we're gonna have to talk about that at some point because my one of my coworkers at school has an old Jeep Wrangler, and that thing is starting to the engine ain't working, and the battery charging system isn't working. So he had to rent his car is in the shop now, and he had to rent a Mitsubishi Mirage. So that's quite a downgrade, but maybe it's kind of an upgrade because the car runs.
Well,
Um,
I'll show you what it looks like here real fast. Because let's start off with a little talk about this because
yeah.
it's an interesting deal here. Um, it was a really nice car on the outside, but the
Yeah,
controls were all funky and everything because I've never driven this car before, and
yeah,
yeah, it was just like the window controls are all in the center console. I didn't know that
yeah,
until I left the person at the car rental was like, "Oh yeah, it's in the center console." I was like, "Oh," and then later on, driving the car at night, I realized that I didn't have the headlights on, and I'm like, "Well, in my car, the my Acura TL, the headlight thing is like on the same thing as the turn signal thing, and it was not on there. It was like on the dashboard, like all the way like down to the left. And I'm like, why is it there? That's stupid."
yeah, yeah. It sounds like a Jeep thing. That's it's funny that you're the console and doing all that because now I have my Optima in the shop because of last week, the issues I had and all having to get that thing repaired, had to put in a claim. So now I'm driving a Toyota Camry. So it's kind of ironic since we're talking about Richmond and it was a Toyota whatever 400 and 250 that I'm driving the Kyle Busch mobile, and the thing it doesn't it drives. I mean, my dad used to have a Camry, so I know what a Camry drives like. It still drives like that. It's kind of like doesn't really have the response that I'm used to, and it's really high. You're really sitting high up in the car. It's kind of weird. I mean, it's a nice car, but um, it's not very user friendly in regards to actually the digital stuff, like the digital stuff and all the controls, just like you're talking about in the Jeep, but then it's a Jeep. Toyota, it doesn't really seem. And then I also like to paddle shift the car or bang shift the car, and the transmission doesn't even respond at all, and it'll go and switch itself right out from auto stick mode back into regular mode. I'm like, who the hell asked you to do that? I don't have that problem in my car, so we'll have this car for a little while. I'm definitely not going to be doing anything crazy with it because I need it until my car gets fixed. But for a couple of weeks, I'll be in a Kyle Busch mobile. So yeah, it's comfortable enough, I guess, but it's not as roomy as my car. But yeah, so now the two hosts of the Gripster podcast are renting, or at least you rented for this week, and it didn't sound that great because it was a Jeep. In my case, I think hopefully it'll be a little better. I mean, there's already body panel detachment, and there's like scrapes and scratches on it. I'm like, well, okay, it sounds like Ty Gibbs must have driven it. But either way, we'll get into now that we've hashed out how our rental car strategies are going, or how rental cars are not exactly doing the best service. We're going to get into the Cup Series race at Richmond, which saw Dennis Hamlin, after what has been a pretty rough start to the year, get another win at home. there was a unique strategy deal where teams were pitting twice versus once. The Gibbs team basically had both sides of that, and Denny Hamlin was able to go and make it pay off, passing Will Byron there late. We'll talk about Martinsville. They have a triple header starting on Thursday night. We're doing this a little in the morning because we're both actually off, so it's a different deal than our usual Wednesday night plan. We'll talk about Formula One, Australian Grand Prix, first time in 2 years, and there's a lot to really get into in regards to that. Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, one of the majors, one of the biggest races in the world. The second biggest IndyCar race there is. How will Scotty McLaughlin continue his hot start to 2022? Can he get a major at Long Beach? We'll round up, we'll cover MotoGP and Moto2. They were at Argentina last week. Big win in MotoGP for Alex Espargaro, getting his first career win in his 200th start, and first win for Aprilia in the Premier class. They're going to be at Circuit of the Americas this weekend, so they'll get to see all the new resurfaced areas of the track that NASCAR saw a few weeks ago. The World Superbike Championship starts at Aragon. The Supercars are at Albert Park for their usual Australian Grand Prix round. And then Formula E is back, and they'll be racing in Rome. We'll see where we're at time-wise, and we could get into some Masters talk and bowling. I bowled my high set of my life on Tuesday, and then afterwards, I don't really remember much. But I did bowl 631, and I bowled a 259 in the last game and won some cash. So I'll take that second. Yeah, I got to say, yeah, for somebody who was completely lathered up, 200, 259 the last two games. We won 5 points. We're making a run. We probably gave up way too many points up a few weeks. For a couple of months, we basically were leaking oil. The last 3 weeks we've been on fire, and 4 of the last 5 we've really been doing work. We went from 9th in the league back to 4th. We'll see what happens. Wanted to finish top 5 in this league. NFL draft talk. Peter Traeger already posted his first mock draft today on Good Morning Football. So there is a bunch of wide receivers, a bunch of quarterbacks. But, of course, the draft is very centric in the defensive and offensive line. Probably getting a little bit of that more as we'll see where we're at, and probably getting it more later next couple of weeks because, Josh, the Jacksonville Jaguars have capital in the first round. The 49ers definitely don't. And a quarter of the league doesn't have a first-round draft pick this year. So we'll see some of those teams that don't have first-round draft picks and why that may be the case versus, why all these other teams like the Jets and the Giants, for example, being local, will have 2 picks each and what they may do with those. Josh will do a sim segment, talk about you're running 87 cars, you got IndyCar action, you got a lot going on there, getting prepped for Indy 500 time and some of the other bigger races that are probably coming up here. So we'll get into that, and then we'll close this for episode 108, a tradition unlike any other. So one tradition that has returned is Denny Hamlin winning at Richmond again. That's a tradition unlike any other. Toyota's winning at Richmond, which seems to be the thing now, has been the thing. I think every race I went to Richmond, a Toyota won. Denny Hamlin has had a rough start to the year, so, to be fair, it's not like he's not giving up much in that. He's still in his 40s. He's still got a lot to give, I guess, and he had a rough start to the year, but he doesn't want to. He's still in it, so it's early in the season. You win a race, you put yourself right back into the mix. He only led 5 laps, but it was 5 laps that counted, and one for what is it? His 47th win in the Cup Series. So that's a big number. 2 wins away from tying Tony Stewart. Kevin Harvick finished second. William Byron finished third. And Martin Truex finished fourth. He led 80 laps, won one stage. Ryan Blaney won the second stage. Ryan Blaney won the first stage. So basically, this race was dominated by 4 drivers: Byron, Truex, Bell, and Blaney. Blaney, of course, qualified on pole again, but wasn't able to close the deal. Kyle Larson started 21st and finished 5th. Bell, Blaney, Bowman, Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, your top 10. Chase Briscoe started 4th, dropped like an anchor, was a lap down, needed to get the lucky dog, and then salvaged an 11th place finish. Brad Keselowski had one of his better runs of the year in 13th, scored stage points. Clyde was only 14th. Logano 17th, and Ross Chastain finished 19th after scoring 3rd in both stages. So rough afternoon after his first career win. Getting in a little bit of argy-bargy with Ryan Blaney, amongst others. So, yeah, Denny Hamlin, Toyota had 3 of the top 6 and 4 of the top 9 in this race, the Gibbs guys. It's been a Gibbs racetrack for a long time, but if you're going to pick a Gibbs car that was going to win the race, it wasn't initially going to be Denny Hamlin, but, of course, in the end, when it counts, strategy, him and Gabe Hart made the right call. They had the tires, and he goes and pays off another win at Richmond there, Josh.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about Denny Hamlin winning at Richmond. That's a tradition unlike no other, like we talked about. And he's won many times in the past and had a really rough start to the season this year. But he was ranked 20th in the standings before this win. Now wins this race and basically turns the entire season around for him. Because once you get that win, it gives you confidence boost for your team and for you as a driver. But then also now it opens up as far as what you can do with your strategy, in these races, and then also your car setup. You can get a little bit aggressive with the car setup and see what kind of changes you can make and what kind of experiments you can make for later in the year. Especially as we get towards the playoffs in September or in August. So there's always all of that you have to consider once you win a race. But I wouldn't have picked Denny Hamlin. I didn't think he had the pace. I thought maybe Kyle Busch would have had the pace for this race, but then he was in the top 5, I think, for most of it, but then, or in the top 10 at least, but then had that penalty, which is really strange to me. I did not know that apparently, adding tape to the grill of the next gen car is a penalty, which is strange, but I guess that's the new rule now with this car. So definitely, everybody learned, and now Kyle Busch had to pay for that one and ended up getting another poor finish. So at least for one Joe Gibbs car, they now have a win with Denny Hamlin. But then some of the other cars, like Kyle Busch, have either self-induced errors or things that just take them out of contention there. So that was a up and down, I guess, for the Gibbs organization. You also had Martin Truex, who was contending for the win too, had a chance to possibly get by William Byron within the last 10 laps, but then I think his car kind of faded because he was getting kind of close to Bill Byron there, but then started to lose pace, and then eventually Hamlin got around him there within that last 10 laps, and then Hamlin passed William Byron there. So definitely a race that involved a lot of tire strategy. That's something that we really haven't seen over the last couple of years in Cup. But I think at this racetrack, it seems like we have a lot of long green flag runs now. There's not really a whole lot of crashing that happens. We did have 2 accidents in this race, but definitely not really a whole lot of action going on outside of that. And so that leads to long runs where you really have to figure out the tire strategy. And then, like you said, Toyota, Joe Gibbs Racing, they went on a 2-stop strategy kind of to end the race, whereas William Byron and his team, they decided to try to go the whole last 90 laps without pitting, and it almost paid off there, but unfortunately it didn't work out for them, and tires faded at the end, and Denny Hamlin ended up getting the win there. So definitely good race, I guess, in terms of strategy, being able to see comers and goers at the end and seeing who had the best, handle on the car with the tire strategy. So we got kind of that race going on. We weren't sure what type of racing we would see with this new car at Richmond compared to the Gen 6. But I think overall, based on that, you had a lot of action towards the end with tire strategy. So at least that made it really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Richmond is they probably need to reseal the place. They used to do that every year. They'd reseal the track, and I think it made the track a little racier. This car has been good virtually every place it's been so far this year. It's, of course, a great road racing vehicle. It's basically a road racing vehicle, but it's been good on a super speedway type track. It's been good on a short track. It's been good in an intermediate setting. So when you have races that are more spread out, you have to kind of figure out what you need to do. And I think the strategy is what made the race more interesting. And that's where the real deal was, the 2 stops versus 1 stop. And you aren't really going to get it out of the announce booth because, they don't know what the hell they're doing. And the sad thing is Chad Knaus actually, I thought, did a really good job. And Chad Knaus is, but then it's typical now. Fox just hires people that are that are still connected within the industry, and they have their personal biases coming out. With Tony, and then you have Chad Knaus, and I mean Miss Hummer was the one difference, but then nobody gives it's Miss
Yeah,
Hummer.
and she doesn't offer anything, anyways.
Yeah, other than blowing Clint in the booth. So it's like I don't know. It's the race itself. I mean, it's Richmond. That's what it's become. It's a shame. They used to call it the action track, and there used to actually be action there. And late in the race there was action, but it is what it is. We will see it in the. Are they in the playoffs? Did they put them back in the playoffs? I don't even remember anymore.
I think they did.
Yeah, so it's like the. Let me just confirm it out of curiosity. Yeah, there are a couple of races before. They'll be in the afternoon. They'll race in August in the afternoon again, after Michigan and before Watkins Glen. So they're 2 before the cutoff race. So there's that. For Richmond, it'll be hotter in August, so maybe it'll be slicker. So that might assist in the racing product that we see there the next time they go there. So this weekend starts today, actually. In regards to the truck series, the Blue Emu 200 will be taking place. If the weather here in New Jersey tells me something, I mean, the weather in Georgia may be a better outlier in regards to the Masters going on right now. They might be able to qualify. There's 39 trucks for 36 spots, so they'd probably go to the algorithm if they can't run qualifying. 43 cars for 38 spots, or 43 for 38, so 5 would miss the show. And the Xfinity, call 811 before you dig 250. What a great name. It's Josh's boy Junebug making his one and only start of 2022 in his Hellman's 88, and got some other people. Ryan Truex will be in the 18 car. Parker Retzlaff, who looks like a cartoon character but is a really, really good iRacer. Had a great run his last race at Richmond last week, and now we'll be back again in the 38 car. You got Ryan Ellis, who's a great PR guy / race car driver, driving for Alpha Prime. So some things are there. 36 cars for the Cup Series. Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 400. So it's the first time in a long time, I think, at Martinsville that they're having a race that isn't 500 laps. So that might change strategies up a little bit, to be determined for 100 less laps. So if you get buried in qualifying, you're not really going to have as much time to recover in the race. You're going to have to do alternative pit strategies and stuff to try to get yourself up front. So let's do this. We'll go for tonight's race because we're doing this on Thursday. The Truck Series. I mean, Kyle Busch is in this race, Josh. So you know me. I just go and pick Kyle Busch automatically, because why not? If I'm going to pick a regular to win, I'll go with Grant Enfinger. It kind of goes the same way as Denny Hamlin. Rough start to the year, but he's with a good team. I think the GMS involvement in Cup and now putting their eggs there and trying to make their situation in Cup look good, which definitely on the 43 side is happening. Maybe not so much on the 42 car, but the GMS truck effort has not looked as good as it has over previous years. Probably stretching of resources might be a part of it, but Grant Enfinger is a great short track racer, ARCA champion. He's won multiple times in the Truck Series. This would be a good spot for him to get that first win, lock himself in the playoffs, and take a little pressure off the organization as they're trying to go and make sure they get themselves ready for later in the year when it really counts. Haley Deegan will be racing. There's issues with trolling and some stuff with death threats to her boyfriend who races in the ARCA E series. So there was question of whether she would race. But she will. We'll see how that goes for her. She's not done much of anything in a truck, so it'll be something to see if she's able to handle that pressure and handle the stress of, her significant other having death threats and then probably other stuff going on with her and how that'll be in that spot. I'm trying to look if there's anybody else. I mean, of course, so far this year, Kyle Busch Motorsports with John Hunter and Chandler Smith have done a lot of work. John Hunter, of course, threw a block on Chandler Smith and allowed Corey Heim to win at Atlanta the last time out. So maybe that might end up coming back around. Maybe it comes back around now, or maybe it'll come back later. Or 2 races ago, sorry, they're at CoTA, and Zane Smith won. I think one other person to look at would be Carson Hocevar. He's really quiet. The Nice team has not been great for a while, but Carson Hocevar just quietly does his thing, and he sneaks up there, and he usually finds himself in a spot to compete. And he's got that talent. He's been one of those guys. So watch out for Carson Hocevar here when they race this truck race. So who are you looking at, Josh, as picks for this truck series event?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to go with John Hunter winning this race. He hasn't had a really great start to the season. He's had 3 20th place finishes to start the year, and then got second at CoTA 2 weeks ago, and now has a chance to finish well at Martinsville, potentially win. He's won here before at Martinsville back in 2018. Started on the pole last year at Martinsville, but then ended up finishing 39th. So it's a little bit hot and cold at this track, but you're in a Kyle Busch Motorsports car. Kyle Busch is racing, so definitely have to be able to contend with your owner, someone who's won at this track many times in the past in the Truck Series. So I definitely think that John Hunter has a lot going for him this weekend. I think other guys you got to look at. William Byron is going to be moonlighting in this race for Spire Motorsports in the HendrickCars.com number 7. This car or this truck was fairly competitive when they ran at CoTA with Alex Bowman. Seems like they're basically going to be using this car as extra practice for Hendrick Motorsports drivers. That's what it looks like so far for the trucks, but I think William Byron, he's had success at Martinsville in the Truck Series before, so I think definitely he could potentially be a contender in this race. Someone at least running top 10, maybe top 5. So we'll see what happens there. I think other guys got to look at. Matt Crafton, always the successful veteran. I think he's always finding a way to have himself contending for races at Martinsville. So I would look at him. Ben Rhodes, another guy. He's had pretty good finishes at Martinsville the last couple of years, so I definitely look at him as a contender in this race. So there's definitely a lot of guys that could either win this race or find themselves finishing in the top 5 at the end of the day here at Martinsville. Of course, this is the Truck Series race, so there's a lot that can happen at Martinsville. A lot of short track hijinks that happen in NASCAR, often happen in the Truck Series because you got a lot of young guys trying to prove themselves. A lot of the wily old vets still trying to show that they can make it happen. So a lot of things can happen in this race. We've seen in the past, Ty Dillon or Austin Dillon or Ty Dillon with Kevin Harvick back in like 2013, if I remember correctly. They had that incident. So there's definitely incidents like that that can happen at Martinsville. So you can see a lot of short track action, I think, here in the Truck Series on Thursday night at Martinsville.
Yeah, a lot to dive in. There will probably be some unnecessary wrecks. We'll talk about the driving standards, which have become a thing, and the lack of respect that some of these kids have for equipment and other drivers. I think that'll come up here next week on episode 109 of the Gripster podcast. We'll go back to regular scheduled programming. We'll have a lot to cover there. For Xfinity, I mean, the big piece is, of course, Junebug running his one Xfinity race of the year. So can he go and jump in a car once a year? Can he go and compete at one of his favorite racetracks, a place where he has won a couple or won in a cup car? He's ran late models at over the years. The junior motorsports team has been solid this year. It's not been, they haven't had the result, probably the final results that they wanted, mainly because Keebler Gibbs seems to win every effing race. But the fact of the matter is, you have Josh Berry, who's the defending winner of this race. You have Allgaier, who makes his bones on smaller tracks anyway. Sam Mayer, who came from the short tracks of Wisconsin. And then Gagson, who won the November race to lock himself into the final 4. So yeah, that's the first piece I would say for you, Josh. I'll let you go first in regards to the picks. Well, they put Kyle Weatherman in the 34, so they'll actually have a chance to make the race. And get through some of these other ones. Yeah, so no. Okay, yeah, so that's I mean, you look at the teams. I mean, it's the big 3 teams. You look at Gibbs, Junior Motorsports, Colleague. That's been the talk all year. I mean, RCR is there, I guess, but Sheldon Creed's kind of had a rough start to the year. Austin Hill's made a quicker transition, but that's mainly because I think Austin Hill has more experience in Xfinity cars anyway, and now he's driving, top flight Xfinity equipment. Compared to where he was before. But yeah, I mean, talk about Junior, what he brings to the table here for Friday night, and his chance to possibly go and get another Xfinity win. And some of the other people you look at that could go and get this win here on Friday evening, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, starting off with Dale Jr. being in this race, and this is going to be his first race since last year at Richmond. Last time he was out in the Xfinity Series, made a lot of friends or a lot of frenemies out there on the track. But Dale Jr. is just out there trying to have fun as an old guy in the series now. But this is his one-off to help the sponsors out with Hellmann's and Unilever and all those guys. So excited to see Dale Jr. back out on the track for that once a year deal. But I think as far as this race, like he's won before once in the Cup Series. Back in October 2014. It's probably my favorite Dale Jr. win, probably because going back over the years, he had so many chances to win at Martinsville in the Cup Series, and something would go wrong, or another incident would happen, or just wasn't there at the time when he needed to be there, or Kevin Harvick moved him out of the way back in 2011 when he was in the middle of his 4-year winless streak. But that was definitely one of my favorite wins of his career. But now comes back to Martinsville in the Xfinity car, which I think for the first time ever in his Xfinity career, he's going to be racing at Martinsville. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see how he does in practice. I think if he feels comfortable in the car, has a lot of speed, coming out of the truck, I think he'll have a good chance to finish in top five, or possibly win here at Martinsville. He's definitely a short track racer, at heart. He knows how to get around this place. So definitely looking forward to seeing him race. As a fan. For me, that's your guy coming back out on the racetrack. That's a huge deal for me. So definitely try to be able to have the race on Friday night and see how Dale Jr. does. But I think for the rest of the contenders, I definitely look at his other JR Motorsports car with the number 9 Noah Gragson. He won last year in Xfinity at this racetrack, and overall seems to really run well at Martinsville. So I would definitely, like, if I'm not going to pick Dale Jr., then I think I'd pick the number 9 to win this race. So he seems pretty strong at Martinsville based on the last couple of years of running there. I mean, same thing for Justin Allgaier also, because he ran pretty well at this track. And then, of course, Josh Berry of last year. That was one of the big stories that happened last year with him winning in the Xfinity Series, and basically parlayed his role into a full-time ride this year. So Josh Berry, he could come out and contend for the win, and potentially actually win this race, and of course defend last year's win. So it would be interesting if Josh Berry coming down and having to battle Dale Jr. for the win. That would be a pretty interesting sight. The owner, the guy that has basically funded his career, versus the the young guy coming up on the ranks, trying to prove himself still, and potentially get up into the Cup Series. So that would be an exciting thing to see. You talked about colleague. We'll see what AJ Allmendinger does in this race. He's ran well at Martinsville before, but I wouldn't consider Martinsville definitely to be one of his strong tracks. But a lot of characteristics that carry over from road course racing, I think, with basically 2 hairpin turns at Martinsville. So we'll see what AJ can do in this car. Ty Gibbs been dominant this year. Expect him to continue to try to extend his dominance into Martinsville. We'll see, if his mile-and-a-half success can carry over to the short tracks here in the Xfinity Series. So, a lot of contenders here that could potentially win this race, and like you said, probably will come from one of the 3 big organizations, whether that's Junior Motorsports or Colleague or Joe Gibbs Racing here in Xfinity.
Yeah, I figure that would be the case. I mean, I'm gonna pick Josh Berry. I just figure it's one of his best racetracks. He's won the 300 at Martinsville. He won the Xfinity races, one of the biggest wins of the year, one of the coolest things of the year. And then he jumped in and basically retired Michael Annett, which was even better. I think that's just funnier to me, because Michael Annett is such a hack. And then they put Josh Berry in the car and he goes and wins. The fact that Josh Berry, and then you, relative to what Mayer did in that car, he did better than Mayer too. So, I mean, this year's kind of been a slow start, but it kind of is. It goes down. I'm going down that same path as Denny Hamlin last week. You had a rough start to the year, but you get one win. Josh already mentioned it. You get a win, you're basically set. You don't really have to do much. You just kind of have to keep on accumulating stage points. You just have to, and playoff points, and put yourself in a position to compete for it. Right now, as it stands, there's only 4 winners, 4 Xfinity Series regulars that have won this year. So Cole Custer, was the other winner. So 5 total winners this year. Gibbs has 3 wins, 16 playoff points, but then otherwise you have Allmendinger 7, Gregson with 8, and who is the overall points leader, Gregson with 8. Sam Mayer has 1 playoff point with a stage win. Austin Hill has his win from Daytona. So Josh Berry is actually 4th in points right now. He's giving up a lot of points to the top 3, which is Allmendinger, Gibbs, and Gregson, but he's right there. All 3 junior motorsports cars are 4th, 5th, and 6th in points, and they've had their various issues. So it would be a great place for them to go and get their season kind of started. You have Daniel Hemrick as the defending series champion, kind of struggling, but he's run well in the Cup car. It's interesting. He runs better in the Cup car than the Xfinity car. Ryan Sieg's actually in the top 12 in points right now, so that's interesting. Creed and Brandon Brown are tied for the cutoff in points. And what is it, 6 points back is Anthony Alfredo. You think about a few weeks ago at California when he came out on the fresh tires and all those red flags took place late. He wins that race. He's in the playoffs right now. So, right now in regards to this race, though, I'll say Josh Berry. I would look at Daniel Hemrick. He had a chance to win the November race and he got moved. He wants to give himself some momentum, put himself in a place to get in the playoff and comfortably start building a portfolio so that they can build towards the playoffs. If there's one in regards to somebody that I would look at, I'm trying to figure out. Derek Griffith, he made his debut last week in the Sam Hunt car. And he had a solid yet unspectacular run, a late model racer. Might be, I'm not saying he's going to win by any means. I figure, a top 15 run would be a good run for them. That Sam Hunt car, especially when John Hunter's been in it, has been really, really fast. Of course, they have Gibbs' help. So that might be somebody to look at. Okay, the Cup Series, 400 laps at Martinsville. This Saturday night. So that'll be the Blue Emu Maximum Relief 400. And 36 cars. So no extra cars will be in this race. J.J. Ailey will be in the 15. Allmendinger will be in the 16 car. And Josh Bilicki will be in the 77. So no bumping, no issue, whatever with that. NASCAR, yeah, so that's it. So, and let me go and bring it up. They have the qualifying order. So practice and qualifying will be on Friday afternoon in Group A. So, yeah, look at that. So, so I'm looking at Group A. Some of the people that'll be in the qualifying in that round will be Byron, Harvick, Hamlin, Larson, Briscoe, Bell, Reddick. So that's a good part of it. Bubba, of course, has had a rough start to the year, but Martinsville is one of his best racetracks. Kurt Busch has had good runs at Martinsville as well. In Group B, you have Brad Keselowski, who I just saw is 31st in points. So can you imagine? You go from being a championship contender for I don't know how many years, and now you're a car owner. You're in the freaking boondocks. Sport's humbling, that's for sure. Cindric, Ross Chastain will be in Group 2 with Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Bowman, Blaney, and Truex, who has won multiple times at Martinsville recently. Bowman, of course, won in November. It was called a hack. I'd like to be a hack and win as many races as Alex Bowman has. This week, you think about last week, Josh, and Toyota, of course, had a great run at Richmond. And Martinsville's been another track where the Gibbs cars with both Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex have done very, very well. But Hendrick Motorsports, if there's certain tracks that you just connect to Hendrick Motorsports, they put all their eggs in the basket in qualifying at Daytona. But Martinsville, Jeff Bodine, they don't win that race. we don't have Hendrick Motorsports anymore. And they've won, I know Elliott's run well plenty of times before. He won the race in November a couple of years ago to give himself the shot to go and win his championship. And you have Bowman, of course, who won there last November. You have Kyle Larson. It's not one of his better racetracks. It never really has been, but he did better than he used to there. And then Byron is a good short track racer. But on my end, I'm gonna go with Joey Logano, and he's ruffled plenty of feathers over his career. He's roughed up Martin Truex to go and get a win. It's his kind of racetrack. It's a place where Penske, of course, they've lost they have good momentum because, Gumby won the 500. Blaney's been fast every week. But when is Joey Logano going to go do something? This is a spot for him, I think, to go and get that first win of the year, lock himself into the playoff, not worry about anything. I think Truex will be there for sure. And I would also say that the 9 car, so all those guys are in Group 2. Somebody, dark horse, that might be able to do something, I would say 2, and it'll offend the LCD people, but Bubba Wallace and Daniel Suarez. Bubba Wallace, this is one of his best racetracks. He's won in a truck multiple times there. He ran well there for Richard Petty Motorsports. I mean, yes, he doesn't have his crew chief. Yes, he doesn't have, they've lost I don't know how many freaking pit members and crew members because of all these issues that 2311 is having this year. But they have a good setup. They have the ability with the Gibbs connection to give Bubba a car. He's had a rough start to the year. This is a place where he can go and get himself back on track. And then you think about Daniel Suarez, who's had he's had a strong start to the year, and he feels comfortable. And I think about a couple of years ago, and he basically said, "This is the best team I've ever been with," and he made these comments, and it spoke from confidence, and it's because he believed in what Justin Marks was doing and Ty Norris and all the people, and now it's coming through. I think it's a matter of time for Daniel Suarez to finally get his first career Cup Series win. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens here in Martinsville. Probably will be like a cookie cutter or road course or something, but he runs very well there. Those are the 2, but I'm picking Joey Logano this weekend for the win at Martinsville, as he goes, and he would be going back as a defending winner of the race at Bristol the following week, which will be on dirt. So how about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm thinking Denny Hamlin, actually. Let's keep going with what happened last week at Richmond, winning there, so he can win in the capital of Virginia and then win in the southern end of Virginia in Martinsville. So Denny Hamlin has had a lot of success at this track also. Should have won last year, probably. Of course, Alex Bowman got in the way of that one, but that's how things happen. But he's had a pretty strong track record at Martinsville. And I think they can carry the momentum of winning at Richmond down into Martinsville. So I see Denny Hamlin winning this race. I can agree with you on Bubba Wallace there. He's had a lot of good finishes at Martinsville in the 43 car, and definitely think after a year, even of being in the 23, even though he doesn't have everybody on the team for the next couple of races, I think Bubba Wallace can definitely have at least a top 10 finish in this race. I think the rest of the Joe Gibbs cars, particularly Martin Truex Jr., he's had a lot of success at Martinsville, also been up front in a lot of these races, so I can see him coming out with the win in this race, or at least contending for a top 5 in Martinsville. Again, I'll look at Alex Bowman, somebody, he won last year, of course, but I think he can back it up and at least get into the top 10 in this race. And, I think another guy I'll look at is Kevin Harvick, someone who's not really won at Martinsville particularly, but he's always had great finishes. He has won at Martinsville back in 2011, but I think for him, he's had a lot of good success at this track, and it looks like for him also maybe some things are beginning to turn around. Of course, finishing second at Richmond last week maybe carry that into Martinsville also, and get a good finish. So yeah, a lot of guys that can contend in this race on Saturday night. Yeah, like you said, a 400 lap race, 400 miles. Well, not 400 miles, but 400 laps. So there's not really going to be a whole lot of time, like you said. So maybe we have a lot of wrecks. I mean, we do have a lot of crashes anyways at Martinsville, but maybe the less 100 laps ups the intensity a little bit. And of course, it's going to be at night, so there's always a different feeling with night races in the Cup race or in the Cup Series. So we'll see what happens there. And you talked about if you don't get a good qualifying effort in, you're going to be at least half a lap down to start the race. Well, you're going to have a really good car, I think, to be able to make it up to the front. And then also, like you said, you're going to have to figure out some type of pit strategy to be able to work yourself up to the front. So we'll see what happens in this race. If somebody like we talked about ends up qualifying at the back, can they make it up to the front and have a put on a show trying to pass cars throughout the field at this paperclip track. So we'll see what happens at Martinsville. Definitely excited for all three races at Martinsville. One of the best racing that you can see in the Cup Series, and definitely a track that if you can go to it, you should definitely try to see a race in person.
Yeah, and there's one other thing that I just thought about. They ran the Coliseum, and that was essentially a test session there. It was a quarter-mile track instead of a half-mile track. But essentially, if there's one track that they never had that kind of, they used to test and all back in the day, but you literally had a full test session for all 36 chartered teams at the Coliseum running this car. So now they have a little bit of data to work with, along with kind of like a baseline setup that they're going to use in the sim. So I think it might be a better race. The night racing, especially with the Gen 6, had gotten to be really bad because of the grip and all the other things, it being so stuck where nobody was really able to pass. Maybe with this car, the night racing will it'll actually be good. So that's another test that we'll get to see on Saturday night at Martinsville. There'll be a couple of consecutive night races, at least for the main event at Bristol on Easter Sunday, which is something I can't believe. It's funny. NASCAR running on Easter forever. It was sacrilege. You can't run on Easter. Well, not only are they running on Easter, they're running on Easter Sunday evening at Bristol after running heat races in the middle of the day. So, yeah, I guess traditions, unlike any other, it don't really matter in NASCAR. Let's go and switch it up here and get into Formula One. This week we'll be going back to the Australian Grand Prix for the first time since 2020 when the teams and everybody were there. They were about to go and run FP1, and a bunch of crew members for, I think, McLaren and maybe one other team had the vid, and they basically had to shut down. And Formula One did shut down from that point until, I think, late June, July of 2020. And they haven't been back to Albert Park since. They've made a couple of changes to the racetrack here at Albert Park to assist in possibly helping with passing. It's never really been known as a great track for overtaking, but it's a opportunity. I mean, we'll be talking about Daniel Ricciardo, so the changes should make 5 seconds quicker. Interesting. So we'll go. What is it? They're saying Lawrence Barretto wrote an article talking about it. They've widened the entry into turn one. They've changed the entry into turn 3, which is a DRS zone, turn 6, and 7.5 meters added to a corner, close to doubling the width and allowing for cars to travel. Okay, section quicker, and then Now the kink no longer features a chicane; it becomes a after feedback. So the curves have been reprofiled, tightened. So there's multiple DRS zones. A pit wall. Okay. Maximum speed in a pit lane. So 4 DRS zones. Create some kind of, yeah. So 4 DRS zones in this weekend's race at Australia. They've there's they're gonna they reprofiled. They took away a couple of corners. Turn 6, 7. They've changed turn 8 instead of there being a chicane. It's just going to be a really long sweeping straightaway leading into the left right of 9 and 10. Reprofiled the straightaway a little bit into 11. The pit road is wider, so that'll probably make pits, and the pit stops will be premium. They change, yeah, you said change turn 1, turn 3. So, I mean, we will see what happens. New car here at in Formula One this year. I guess the first thing we can do is talk about the track, Josh, but we don't know. We're not going to know until tomorrow because we're doing this on Thursday. But do you feel like those changes with the new car will assist in having a better product on the racetrack in general relative to what we've already seen so far in 2022?
Well, we'll have to see what it looks like when we get to practice later this week on Friday. But I mean, based on the map, what they've changed to the track, I mean, like you said, you take away like the turn 9 and 10 chicane, and then you basically just have a long sweeping corner down all the way to what is or what was turn 11 and 12. So that could potentially like add a little bit more passing opportunity there with DRS, like you said. So something like that could happen. We have a little bit more passing action, but I mean this racetrack in the past became basically a follow the leader racetrack, and if you had a good qualifying effort, you could potentially end up having a good race, especially if you're a team that doesn't really have good results. If you can qualify well, you could potentially finish in the points. So that's something to consider there. We have 2 DRS detection zones in this racetrack. Going from 6 and 7 all the way down to what is now turn 9 and 10, and then another DRS zone from 10 down to 11. And then you have the speed trap in turn 1. So yeah, this racetrack could be interesting. The new car, of course, seems to look like it has overtaking a little bit easier, but this racetrack could potentially see that, but then it could end up staying the same. We'll have to see. I think the configuration, some unknowns that we're probably gonna have to find out later as we get into all the practice sessions and qualifying before the race.
And certain teams, I know there's two that I wanted to mention before we talk about the current top two. You got Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, and George Russell. Of course, the aero and downforce situation, the porpoising problems they have with their car, along with the power unit deficit they seemingly have. And then you consider it is Australia, Daniel Ricciardo. He's never officially finished on the podium at the Australian Grand Prix. I have a hard time believing that's going to happen in this weekend, but they had a recovery run with Lando Norris in the top 10 at Saudi Arabia. I mean, the Mercedes-powered teams are at a deficit, but I would look at those two teams. Those are the two main teams Mercedes has. What are they? What can we expect? I mean, it's a different type of circuit. They ran fast. You're talking about the average run of the mill Formula One circuit at Bahrain. You had the Circus Clown Show, which is Saudi Arabia, which is an overrated go-kart track. And now you have a temporary street circuit, which is old school temporary street circuit, little safer. Speeds are a little more within reason relative to the safety and everything. They've done resurfacing in a lot of areas. It's been a couple of years. So I'm sure the downforce will be an issue. I mean, for me, I think Mercedes will have some sort of upgrade here. A small upgrades. I figure McLaren will be the same. They don't want to have Daniel Ricciardo not making it out of Q1. They want him to at least make it into Q2. I think George Russell will be okay there this weekend at Albert Park. Lando Norris, he's fast. Generally. So, I mean, I have high hopes for both of those teams. I'm not sure if the practice or the speed will actually fit there. There's a big gap that they have to make up relative to the top two teams here in as we start early part of this year. I mean, we discussed it, I think, ad nauseum so far with Ferrari and Red Bull. I mean, I think Red Bull's biggest problem is the powertrain. I don't think the car. I think the car is pretty good. Verstappen was actually able to get his head out of his ass and actually race properly and defeat Charles Leclerc. But Charles Leclerc has been more consistent, and I think honestly he's the fastest driver right now. You add Carlos Sainz, who's just quietly consistent, and you have Sergio Perez coming off of his first career pole and feeling as though he probably got robbed at Saudi because of the full course, full safety cars. And you've got a really good battle, at least for the top four in qualifying, let alone, what we'll see with four DRS zones. If you're thinking about what we had at Saudi when they're trying to go and brake test to get out of DRS or that might end up having a similar kind of situation here, Josh, with Verstappen versus Charles Leclerc, Part 3 here to start 2022. But I also think that their teammates are going to have something to say about that.
Yeah, I think so too. You look at what Charles Leclerc has done this year, and it's been a pretty impressive start to the year for Ferrari and for Charles Leclerc. So, yeah, I expect him to be up front again. And Max Verstappen, too. Both of them seem to have gotten good handle on this new car. And I think, give a lot of credit to their teams as well for figuring it out and being able to start up the year on a good front. But I think it's been an interesting start to the year for some of these teams. Like you talk about Carlos Sainz as well, someone who hasn't really had a lot of success so far in Formula One, but now he's kind of running up front with Ferrari, and now it seems like those teams have a good handle on the car. Expect their teammate for Red Bull for Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, definitely look at him to be up front alongside his teammate there. So expect him to be able to have something to say, something to show for this weekend. We'll see if Mercedes can recover. We'll see if they can, have a better race than what they've had so far to start the year. We'll see if they can come out and kind of return back to their form that they had early last year, certainly, and having a better chance at this racetrack and everything. And I look at another team that has been pretty well this year, and that's Haas. Even though they had the incident with Mick Schumacher in qualifying last week or 2 weeks ago at Saudi Arabia, I think they could definitely have a good chance in this race here. And I go back to 2016 when they started out and got a sixth place finish in their first race in Formula One as a Haas F1, and Romain Grosjean brought the team basically out and got a good start to their season that year, and their debut in Formula One. So I would look at them this weekend. They've had two great races with Kevin Magnussen. Mick Schumacher had a solid effort in his one race before his qualifying crash, and they of course are running without a spare car this weekend, so it's going to be a little bit tough on being able to not getting any incidents so far this year in the weekend. Mick Schumacher has had some qualifying incidents before, but he's probably going to be careful to not crash the car this weekend in any of the practice sessions before the race. So we'll see what Haas can do. Kevin Magnussen, expect him to try to get another points finish, whether that's up towards closer to the top 5 or in the bottom half of the top 10. So some solid results from Haas to start the year. Let's see what they can do this weekend. Definitely think Alpine. They might, they might have a chance to be in the points in this race. Fernando Alonso has had a pretty interesting start to the year for him. Esteban Ocon also has had a pretty good start to the year as well. So we'll have to see, if they can continue what they did back at Saudi Arabia. They had that great battle between the teammates in Saudi Arabia. We'll see if that thing can continue, especially with the way that the racetrack reconfiguration is looking like. You see what the racetrack is looking like now. There could be a lot of opportunities to pass and repass down the straights, especially if you're closely following another car with DRS behind, or having an opportunity to have DRS. So we'll have to see what happens there in that race. Especially if you're able to follow a car onto the straights where you have DRS detection. So there's a lot of things that could happen in this race. We'll see if they can have DRS and have a lot of passing, but if not, then it could be like in the past where it's basically follow the leader, like we said earlier. So I mean, I'm definitely still looking at Ferrari and Red Bull to continue Chapter 3 of their battle this year, but maybe some other players as well. And then, I mean, we should probably have to talk about Daniel Ricciardo also and McLaren, because
Yep.
they have not had a great start to the year. Various issues with their car. We thought maybe they would come out and do well after their preseason testing. Seemed like they were running pretty quick, but now they've had 2 really bad races, really, for both of their cars, and this is Daniel Ricciardo's home Grand Prix. After 2 years of not having this race, he's probably really desperate and wants to have a great race to show in front of his friends and family back home in Australia. So he wants to be able to run up front, or at least get within the points and get a good finish. So we'll see if they can at least put a good effort for this race. If they can't do anything else during the year, at least have a good result to show for at your home Grand Prix. So we'll see what McLaren and Dan Ricciardo can do this weekend at Melbourne and Albert Park.
Yeah, that's going to be a key storyline during the whole entire weekend, of course, is what does Daniel Ricciardo do? What can McLaren do since they're on the back foot? I think you mentioned Alpine, of course, they're going to run their main livery starting this weekend. The majority, I think the majority pink livery or blue livery starting this weekend after running a majority pink livery the first 2 races at Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. You'll think about some of the other drivers like Gasly, who seems to always put himself in a good position qualifying wise. How will Mick respond after having to take a week off? Or a couple weeks off and recover. That's something we'll see with that. What can Williams and Aston Martin do? Sebastian Vettel will make his return after COVID, being out with COVID the first 2 races. What about Alfa Romeo with Valtteri Bottas, who was in position to possibly score points at Saudi before overheating issues? And how will Zhou Guan Yu go and do at a circuit that he hasn't run at before? We will get in all that. We'll talk about it next week on the GSP. They'll have time off before they go to the Parmigiano Reggiano Grand Prix in Imola. We'll go from one big street race around the world to another big street race around the world. But actually, you know what? We didn't do that. The picks. I mean, it sounds like you're going Ferrari. I'll just go and make myself nauseous, and I'll just go Red Bull, and you get Ferrari, and then we get to see who's better off. I mean, for somebody who's going to be in the top five, I think for a dark horse candidate to be in the top five, I do think Pierre Gasly is my pick for that. He's run well there before, not only in the AlphaTauri, but in a Red Bull. So I think Pierre Gasly would be somebody I could sneak a top five finish, help the AlphaTauri effort in regards to their battle within the midfield. How about you? What are you looking at as somebody that could possibly sneak in? I think I might have left a couple of good ones. I'm pretty sure I left a couple of good ones up there.
Well, I mean, for me, I kind of already alluded to it earlier, but I think a dark horse for me would be Kevin Magnussen in the Haas car. He's
Yeah,
had two great starts two great races for the year, and I expect him to continue to lead the charge for Haas and get another finish in the points somewhere. I mean, I don't think they're a top five contending car yet. But it looks like they have a lot of pace this year compared to the last couple of years in Formula One for them. So expect them to be able to at least get a points finish, whether at least 10th to 6th place range for that team.
which would be, as I mean, you mentioned that's my fault. The way they were for the last 2-3 years to where they are right now. It's a great thing. Kevin Magnussen has brought a lot of positive energy to the organization, and he seems rejuvenated, like a whole new guy. And it's, I think, a big part of why this early part of the season, it's a time to pounce, because even within the cost cap realm, it's Formula One. There's going to be development. Williams doesn't want to stay in the back. Aston Martin definitely doesn't want to stay in the back. Stroll's a freaking trillionaire. He's not going to sit there and watch his car be the worst car on the grid, which it is, basically. McLaren's not going to be back there the whole year, you wouldn't think. Mercedes, of course. And then you have, AlphaTauri and Alpine. I mean, there are rumors that Pierre Gasly is going to go to Alpine, which I think I said a couple years ago is what they should have done anyway. It would have made more sense than hiring Fred Alonso again. But and they'll probably tell Fred to go away, and that's what they'll do. They'll go with two French guys, and then hedge and see how that works. But we'll get into that accordingly next week. Another big race is the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, and that reminds me of one other thing there. But the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, the IndyCar, basically the biggest road race in the IndyCar series. It's existed since 1984 on the calendar, so longer than I've been alive. Of course, the race has existed since the 70s with Formula 5000 and Formula One. It's a legendary race. Most of the greats have won it. Michael Andretti won his first career race there. Al Unser Jr. was the king of Long Beach, won 6 times there. You've had guys like Power and Ryan Hunter-Reay won there. Big win for him and Andretti Autosport, about 12 years ago, running for Izod. He ended up meeting Becky there, and of course his mom and with cancer and the whole, so where he runs the number 28. I mean, there's a lot of big wins. Dario, Dixon. I mean, it's a big one. You want to win it. This weekend's race is no different. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. In regards to what we're going to see, it's a tough field. You have a lot to, and it's basically after this week, you have a couple of weeks off, and then they're going to Baba, and then it's the month of May at Indy. So you really gotta show up here and do work. You'll have a 1-hour practice session on Friday evening. You'll have a 1-hour practice session on Saturday morning, qualifying on Sunday or Saturday afternoon before the IMSA race. Then they'll have a short warm-up and the race. on Sunday, which will be on Big NBC, which will be good to instead of it being on. There's Alex Zanardi. I forgot. Yeah, I mean the past winners, they didn't run the race in 2020, but Alexander Rossi's a two-time winner here, and I think that's the first piece we're going to go over. Josh, I know I mentioned it. Scotty McLaughlin will do that too, but Alexander Rossi, there's a lot of bad juju going on there at Andretti Autosport, at least on his end, the 27 car. He was a guy who's a contender, a championship contender for multiple years, has won the Indianapolis 500 and contended for another Indianapolis 500 win. But recently, his luck has just been atrocious. And it's kind of like what Ryan Hunter-Reay's end of his run at Andretti Autosport was. But this is one of his best racetracks. It's home, Southern California. Can Alexander Rossi get off the schneid, what he's been on for like about 2 years, it seems like, and come back and get that third win at Long Beach and really reset the narrative of what his situation is in IndyCar? Or are we going to continue to see the unfortunate downturn that has come along for him and his side of the garage at Andretti Autosport?
Yeah, it's been an interesting deal for Alex Rossi the last couple of years. You talk about his performance, what we thought it would be after 2019. We thought he would be one of the contenders in this series for a long time coming and kind of be the staple at Andretti Autosport. But it looks like now he's beginning to slip, and has already slipped a lot. And it looks like Colton Herta is kind of taking over that number one spot in Andretti Autosport. And we've talked about comparing their performances, and Rossi's been needing to be able to step up his game compared to Colton Herta, who seems like he's begun to have a handle in this series and potentially could be moving up to Formula One within the next couple of years, depending on what happens with Michael Andretti there. For Alexander Rossi this year, he had an up and down race at St. Petersburg. Ultimately, ended up leading 10 laps in that race, but deferring strategies and everything, and didn't have a great finish there. And then, of course, had issues at Texas and ended up not finishing that race. So, he has had a lot of issues to start the year. Could have a chance to turn it around at Long Beach, but I think for me to be convinced for him to have a good showing there, he's got to show a lot of pace in practice and also in qualifying. Got to be able to show you have top speed, at least top 5 speed in practice, and then you have to be able to qualify up front for me to really consider Alexander Rossi as somebody that can contend at the Long Beach Grand Prix. So, I mean, I think it's going to take a lot, but he's certainly a driver that when things go right, he's definitely capable of doing great things in the car. We've seen him win this race before. We've seen him win plenty of other races in this series. So, if he's able to get it back together, it could be something, but I'm just not convinced yet until I see it.
And in this grid and the way that how competitive the IndyCar series is, I've said that ad nauseum too on this show. When you get behind, it's very hard to come back. I mean, Rossi. I always remember his Watkins Glen domination from a few years ago and Road America domination, and he's a two-time winner of this race. He knows how to win in big spots. But something's off. And as Josh said, Colton is the guy there. He's become a street course expert. He made Scotty McLaughlin work at St. Petersburg for that first career win, along with Newgard, whoever. So, I mean, that kind of goes into that next part with Scotty McLaughlin. He's had a great start to the year. Theoretically, could have 2 wins to start the year, but got passed there late in the last lap pass by Joseph Newgarden. So the fact of the matter is, you go and lose to your teammate. I mean, it sucks, but in the end, you're talking about somebody of a high level of talent and ability in Joseph Newgarden, a multiple two-time champion of this series. I mean, that's something. He'll be running the Snap-on car this weekend. Scott McLaughlin, he is the points leader. What do we expect? I mean, of course, at St. Petersburg, he put it on pole and he held on and did such a great job to win the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg back in February now, the end of February. But now, 2 races in, he's been the standout performer in the IndyCar series, and he made his name in the V8 Supercar Championship the same way. Scotty took 1 year to learn. It's similar to what Simon Pagenaud did at Penske in his first year. He struggled. And then the second year, I think he won the championship. It's got similar feelings to that. And he ran well at Alabama or Baba. He has, I mean, one win, 2 podiums, and a pole, led 235 laps so far, and a 1.5 average finish. A 28-point lead on Will Power's teammate, 30 on the defending series champion Alex Palou, 32 Newgarden, and we go from there. Dixon is 6th. Colton Herta is 8th, and what is it? You got Jimmy Johnson's actually 11th. Look at that. Pato O'Ward 13th. Struggling start to the year for him. Elio Castro-Neves 18th in points. Alexander Rossi, we were talking about him just now, is 27th. He's behind drivers. He's behind 1, 2, 3, 4 drivers that have only made 1 start this year. He should just be thankful that one of his teammates is Devlin DeFrancesco. So, I mean, for me, Scotty, he was my guy in the supercars. He's fast. These street circuits kind of fit his driving style because he had to do it in a tin top car. I think he knows how to get the most out of the car on these tighter circuits. I mean, he can do it anywhere, honestly. There's a reason why, Penske wanted him. So will he continue his run? Do I think he can win again? Absolutely. Do I think he can? Yes. Will he? No. He probably get a top 5 finish, top 10 finish here at Long Beach. I'm thinking this weekend will be it's going to be a Honda, and I think it's going to be Alex Palou. Alex Palou, he's just really, really consistent, and it's scary how consistent he is. He's a guy that he's learned a lot from Scott Dixon, obviously, and he also did a great job of learning when he was driving for Dale Coyne in his first year in the series. I think Palou opens up his winning column here to start 2022 at Long Beach, and then goes to Barber and to defend that race victory with some good momentum. I think somebody who would be a dark horse candidate would be Takuma Sato. It's hard to say that when the guy's a 2-time Indy 500 winner and he has won this race before, but it's similar to when he won the race before. He's driving for a smaller team. You're not theoretically going to go and say, oh, Takuma Sato is going to go and win this race. That team last year, of course, different players, Romain Grosjean, Busan or whatever his engineer, they were up front. They ran well virtually every race that they were in, last year. So, and he did great on the street circuits. So why can't they do that here in this spot? I'm sure the ovals are. I mean, he's going to line up more, trying to get more at Indianapolis. I know he really wants to go and get another one there, but he knows how much Long Beach means. I think they're going to be somebody that to look at, depending on how practice and qualifying go. Of course, that's somebody I would really keep an eye on because he's a veteran. He's been around forever. That would be somebody I would look at as a dark horse pick. But I would say that Alex Palou is my pick for the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach this weekend. Who are you looking at, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, you took it kind of right out of my hands there. I was thinking about picking Alex Blow. I mean, he's had a strong start to the year as well. I mean, he was right on Scott McLaughlin's gearbox in St. Petersburg and was really pressuring him there for the win. And then, of course, he ran pretty well at Long Beach last year en route to winning the title for the IndyCar Series. So he definitely knows how to get it done on these street courses in IndyCars. But I mean, I think for me, I'm going to go with the guy that won at Long Beach last year and has been pretty good on street courses too, and that's Colton Herta. Talked about him earlier, his rise to being the top guy in Andretti Autosport, and definitely think this year is basically his prove it year to see not only if he can contend for the championship in IndyCar, but potentially position himself to get into Formula One if Michael Andretti is able to get a ride or get a team in Formula One. So, yeah, I look at him as somebody that can be strong at this track and potentially win. I think Scott McLaughlin, like you said, will be a contender in this race, but ultimately don't think he'll win. But don't be surprised if he ends up on the podium. That shows his improvement from last year. And like you said, he needed a lot of time to be able to get used to the IndyCar, but now that he's got time under his hands and is able to get all that experience, now he knows what he's doing in this car, and expect a lot of things for him. Expect him a lot of things to happen. So definitely think Scott McLaughlin there could be a contender in this race. And one team that I'm looking at also that's got to make some improvements is McLaren and IndyCar. They haven't really had a great start to the year either for their team, and we expected a lot out of Pato O'Ward in particular, somebody that had a strong end to the year and finished in the championship in third place and was a contender for the championship at the end of last year. So this is a track for him that he could run well at if things go well. Didn't have a great ending to the year at Long Beach last year. Let's see if he can turn it around and potentially get a top 5 or a top 10 finish in this track. So definitely think they have a lot of room for improvement, but they have the capability to get it done. And I think for me, I'll go with a really big dark horse, and going to continue riding this one with Jimmy Johnson. Last year finished 17th in this race, best finish in the road courses in IndyCar, and it's shown a lot of improvement over the course of 2021 leading up to the last race at Long Beach, and that was one of his only finishes on the lead lap in IndyCar, and got it done on a road course. And so far this year, didn't really do that well at St. Petersburg, but had a deferring strategy. So potentially, maybe if the strategy goes right, we can see him kind of run, close to the top 10 ish in his car, or potentially being able to have a little bit more pace and maybe challenge without needing to go to alternate strategies. So continuing to look at him as somebody that could maybe not finish in the top 10, but certainly somebody that would surprise a lot of people if he can finish in the top 10. So that's what I'm gonna go with for my dark horse.
And it's a home game for him too in Long Beach. So, one California guy, famously won his first Cup race at California Speedway, El Cajon, all that. So it'd be good for him to go and get it done at Long Beach. Of course, he had a great run at Texas last time out. So, Jimmy Johnson, he's one of the greatest drivers ever. And he's driving for Ganassi. So maybe he will figure it out as we go along this year. Uh, well, let's go from there. We got the Indy cars done. We'll get into the roundup. As I mentioned earlier in the Open, Ali Espargaro won the race at Argentina for the first win for Aprilia, his first career win and his 200th start, which is insane. Big deal for them. Alex Espargaro defeated Jorge Martin on the Pramac Ducati, Alex Rins and Joan Mir, the former world champion, third and fourth, the Suzuki duo. Pecco Bagnaia, who had a brutal qualifying, came all the way back to finish 5th. Brad Binder 6th. Vinales 7th on the other Aprilia. Defending world champion Fabio Quartararo finished 8th. Marco Bezzecchi 9th for the VR46 team. Enia Bastianini, the winner at Qatar, finished 10th. Luca Marini 11th. Nakagami, Oliveira, Jack Miller, and Alex Marquez made up your points finishers. Pol Espargaro crashed while running on the podium. Johan Zarco crashed while running second. Morbidelli retired from the race with mechanical issues, which was a brutal weekend for Yamaha in general. The two satellite Yamahas finished 18th and 20th, so their pace deficit is huge. Especially the motor, the engine is not great. Doesn't seem like the chassis is that good either. And you're going to CoTA this weekend where you need to have top straight line speed and other, top, because you have multiple passing zones, and that's going to be a big problem for them. It'll be probably be a similar weekend with the Italian bikes up there doing what they're going to be doing. In regards to the Argentine Grand Prix for Moto2, Celestino Vietti, the protege of Valentino Rossi, goes and wins. I like that guy's name, Sergio Garcia. He's on a gas. And the Moto3, none of those people, I don't even know who any of them are, to whatever. So Celestino Vietti wins over Chantra, who won the previous race for his first career win. Ayogura finished 3rd. Aaron Canet and Jake Dixon, your top 5. Cameron Bobier finished 11th. Joe Roberts 13th in regards to the Americans. And trying to go and flip through here. Sean Dillon Kelly didn't even, it says 0. I guess there must have been something. Or they all Sean Dillon Kelly was taken. There was part of a massive first lap crash, which took out with him, Nicolo Antonelli and Augusto Fernandez. So that's pretty bad. And then there was other crash that they show here with times, which is confusing. It seems like, 10 bikes were taken out in the first lap crash. So that's pretty bad. We'll see what the Americans can do at a track that they're all familiar with and all have done well at, especially Cameron Bobier and Sean Dillon Kelly at CoTA, as they go and build up this season. After CoTA, they'll have a couple weeks off, and they'll go to the Algarve in Portugal, Jerez, and then they'll go from there. Going to IMSA. IMSA will be back this weekend at Long Beach for a 100-minute sprint race at Long Beach. The trying to go and see race countdown, going to do all that. Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. As I always say on this website, their website sucks, just like NASCAR.com, but then they're run by the same people. Ryan Eversley and Aiden Reed will be making their debut in the Rick Ware Racing Acura number 51, so that'll be cool. Ryan Eversley is who knows how to work social media very, very well. Trying to get into, so the Grand Prix of Long Beach will have 6 DPI cars and 21 GTD cars, 15 on the GTD and 6 on the GTD Pro side. Bring up the entry list over here. That's one. They're only showing. That just seems weird. Okay, so the 2 Chip Ganassi Cadillacs, all one with Renger van der Zandt, Sebastian Bourdais, and Earl Bamba and Alex Lynn. They won the 12 Hours of Sebring. Then the JDC Miller team with Vautier and Westbrook, Cadillac. The Acura number 10, Ricky Taylor and Philippe Albuquerque. Wayne Taylor Racing, the 31 Wheel and Engineering team of Pippo Durrani and Tristan Nunez, and then the Daytona 24-hour winning Meyer Shank Racing Group with Oliver Jarvis and Tom Blomqvist. In GTD Pro, you have the Corvette number 3 of Garcia and Jordan Taylor, the Matt Campbell, Matthew Jaminet, Pfaff Motorsports number 9, the 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus with Hawksworth and Barnicoat, Ross Gunn and Alex Riberas in the Harder Racing number 23 Aston, the number 25 BMW of Connor DeFilippi and John Edwards, because they're sure went down to one car for the rest of the year. And then Cooper McNeil and Raffaele Marciello, who they've committed to running the Mercedes here in GTD Pro. In the GTD category, the Paul Miller Racing BMW Sellers and Snow, Montecalvo and Tielitz for the Vassar Sullivan number 12. Lexus, the Wright Motorsports Porsche with Ryan Hardwick and Jan Halen. You got Roman DeAngelis, Maxime Martin, Harder Racing Aston, Mike Skeen, Stephen McAleer, and a Korthoff Motorsports Mercedes. The GMG Racing Porsche, so that's James Sofronis, of course, making his usual appearance at Long Beach. Westphal and McGuinness for the Carbon Lamborghini. The NTE team, Don Yout, Jaden Conwright. I mentioned earlier Eversley and Aiden Reed. And the Brickware Acura. The Windward Mercedes with Russell Ward and Philip Ellis. John Miller and Paul Holton in the Crucial Motorsports McLaren. Mark Miller and Mario Farnbacher in a Gradient Racing Acura. The number 70 Inception Racing McLaren, Brandon Uribe and Frederick Schandorf. Then Bill Arberlin, Robbie Foley, the Turner Motorsport BMW M4, and then Rob Ferriel and Catherine Legg in the Hardpoint Porsche number 99. Makes up your grid at Long Beach. I'll go and say that I'd venture to say the 0-1 has had a rough start to the year. I think this is where they turn it around. Renger van der Zande, Sebastian Bourdais, who's won multiple Long Beach Grand Prix and an IndyCar. So it'd be a good spot for him to go and do something. And I'll go with the Pfaff Motorsports Porsche and GTD Pro, Campbell and Jaminet. And then in GTD, I will go with the 96 of Bill Auberlin, Robbie Foley. Of course, Bill Auberlin, the winningest driver in IMSA history, been around forever, would be a good way to get their regular season going after a couple of enduros to start 2022. Going from that, I got so many pages open, and I went and lost my outline. That's good. Let me go and take a second over here and scroll back down to Supercars at Albert Park this weekend. We have the news they've already had qualifying. David Reynolds and Will Davison have already qualified for poles for the first two Supercar races at Albert Park. There's Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso drove V8 Supercars as well, so that's cool. Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, has started this year out on fire, winning a bunch, and he has a 57-point lead on Anton De Pasquale. Will Davison is third, so the two Dick Johnson cars are second and third. Chaz Mostert for the Andretti United Walkinshaw team is fourth. Brody Kostecki fifth. Brock Feeney, who's Van Gisbergen's teammate, is in sixth. Cam Waters, Will Brown, David Reynolds, Todd Hazelwood, your top 10 early on in the 2022 V8 Supercars season. They're going to have They're scheduled, of course, with the Australian Grand Prix this weekend. They had the qualifying yesterday, and then they're gonna have what looks like 3 or 4 races here this weekend. They'll run on Sunday, they'll run on Saturday, and they'll run on Friday, I think, as well. So grids are paired for 8 minutes. Okay, grids for the 3rd and 4th races. Yeah, so 4 races this weekend for the Supercars calendar. We'll see if Shane Van Gisbergen can continue the momentum that he has built up at the start of this season to go and defend his Supercars title. Also winning at Bathurst, which was a big deal for them. And get back to the World Superbikes are going to make their season debut here this after a great championship last year, which saw Toprak beat out Johnny Ray, who had won I don't know how many freaking world championships in a row. So we have good testing pace with Ducati in there, Kawasaki. So you have finalizes Philip and Isaac Vinales. Oh, well, whatever. Barcelona leaves Gerloff with a smile on her face. That's good. So that's something to see, since we want to see Garrett Gerloff try to go and compete this year for the World Championship. Doesn't look so great in the MotoGP side of things, but, at least if he can go and win a World Championship, that would be great. Trying to go and see the drivers, riders, and teams. Okay, well, that's not good. They don't update these from last year. Oh, well. So they'll be racing this weekend at Aragon, and then they'll have a couple-week break, and they'll go to Assen. Then they'll have a month break between that and Estoril. So that'll be a fast start to the year. Phillip Island will be the end of the season. They'll run at what's it called? The same racetrack that MotoGP raced at a few weeks ago in Indonesia, Mandalika, and then they'll run Villacom. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. Garrett Gerloff, of course, is what I'm looking for in regards to the World Superbike Championship. Can he finally contend and win a World Superbike Championship? Yamaha has been good here last year to finally beat Kawasaki. So can they go and contend? The last series we'll get into in the roundup is Formula E, and they're back. Rome Prix. So they had. We'll get into. They've had season 8. They've already run 3 races: Mexico City, and then the 2 races in Saudi. You had Pascal Wehrlein win over his teammate Andre Lauderer and Jean-Eric Verne, and Antonio Felix da Costa bringing the Cheetah team 3rd and 4th. Rocket Venturi Racing's Eduardo Matara finished 5th. So the drivers' standings going into this weekend's race: Mortara has a 5-point lead over defending champion Nick De Vries. Verline is tied for 3rd with Andre Lauderer's teammate at 30 points. Stoffel Van Dorn is 5th, giving Mercedes EQ 2 in the top 5 as well. Jean-Eric Verne is 6th. Jake Dennis ran Avalanche Andretti is 7th. Luca De Grassi, Robin Freins, and Antonio Felix da Costa is your top 10. And Oliver Askew scored points in the first round, and right now he's 15th in the points, but of course he's learning on the fly here, so we will see how they go. Yeah, the Mahindra cars and the Andretti cars basically look the same. That's not a good job with their paint schemes. And then you have the Neo team that sucks, and the Dragon Penske team. That's Antonio Giovinazzi. All right, so we'll get into what happens there at the Prix this weekend for rounds 4 and 5, and then their next race will be at Monaco at the end of the month. There. Just now that we're switching over here to the next part, I mean, I mentioned I bowled 631, which was my high set of my life. Bowled 259, second highest game of my life. 267. I had the front nine a while ago, a few months ago, and then fucked up in the 10th. In this case, I had a 7-bagger in the middle of the game after a spare in the first frame and kept it clean, bowled a clean game, won some money. And after I left, I don't really remember much, which is probably not a good thing for me. But I did win and got some new equipment, got a new Ghost, Black Widow Ghost, and I'm looking forward to throwing a new Power Torque. Now my third one, since the first one got jacked up at the bowling alley. The second one was poorly drilled, so now I have it drilled the way I want it. Let's see how it goes. We'll get to throw it tonight in league, even though it's going to be on the shit burn and upstairs at Bolero because the floors suck and they don't bother to oil. But we will see how that goes. I'll have more updates in regards to that. I'll have thrown it in the money league by the time we do our next episode. In regards to the leaderboard right now in the Masters, Harry Higgs is at 2 under, making the turn. He's been fluctuating between one. He started at 1 over, and now his 2 under is leading by a shot over Taylor Gooch, Daniel Berger, and Joaquin Neiman, Adam Scott, and Tony Finau. It's very low scores right now. At the moment, Eldrick is at even par through 5, which is pretty good. Scotty Scheffler is even par through 3, the number 1 player in the world. Cameron Smith, a guy who's done really well, won the Players, started at 2 over and has clawed back to even. We have some other guys. Former champion Mike Weir's 1 over, which is pretty good for him. Zach Johnson, former champion, 1 over. Fleetwood, defending champion Hideki Matsuyama's 1 over. So a lot of guys are 1 over. JJ Spawn's about to finish, and he just won last week. He's at +2. Freddie Couples right now +3, along with Larry Mize, a couple of former past champions there. Getting through some of these other guys going a little higher scores. Molinari 4 over. Vijay Singh at 6, and Matthew Wolf is at 6 over. He's had a rough start to the day. Bogeyed doubled the first, bogeyed the second, which is a par 5, bogeyed the third, and then bogeyed 7 and 8. So he's bogeyed both par 5s so far today, which is not good, especially when you have to make hay on those. We'll give more into what happens at the Masters here in the next episode too, because I love this golf tournament. It's why they're running that's part of the reason why Martinsville is being run on Saturday night, because they don't want to be up against the final round of the Masters. So that's part of it. The NFL draft I mentioned, like Schrager put out his mock draft 1.0. There's been a bunch of other ones. I'll be honest. I know, Josh, you mentioned it too. I mean, when your team doesn't have a first round draft pick, and it's likely they're not going to draft in the first round, doesn't really matter as much. I mean, our first round draft pick was last year when we drafted Trey Lance, and likely is going to be the starter, hopefully, so that they can actually go forward instead of this Jimmy G garbage. I mean, it's great. Brought us back to relevancy, but it's time to move on. We have 4 years of control with Trey Lance. Need to make hay with these 4 years and try to get get the Lombardi back to Santa Clara, where it belongs. It hasn't been there since 1995. It's about time it comes back there. I know your Jacksonville Jaguars have a couple of options there. You could go defensive line at number one with Aiden Hutchinson. You could go offensive line with Evan Neal. Kayvon Thibodeau might be in play. You're gonna get somebody that's an impact player there, and you have a coach that knows what he's doing in Doug Peterson. It's just a case of what else will come with that as the rest of the draft goes on.
Yeah, I think for the Jags, it's going to be an interesting draft for the first pick. They have a chance to pick up Aiden Hutchinson, Aiden Walker, Kayvon Thibodeau, and all three of those players are pretty solid. But I'm based on what I've read so far, which was trying to do a little bit of reading on this while you're going through the roundup and everything, and I think it looks like the Jaguars, their best fit player probably is Aiden Hutchinson. Probably fits a lot of what they want to do on defense here in 2022 with their new defensive coordinator, Mike Campbell from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think after that, if they don't go Hutchinson, they probably go Trayvon Walker. Seems like they really love him as a prospect. And definitely he's somebody that could fit the mold of what they want on defense. I think what they're trying to do is pair somebody up with Josh Allen, so they have a 1-2 punch. I think it's pretty clear that Josh Allen isn't like that number one edge rusher that can create things. He's somebody that needs somebody else on the other end to really help him, create pressure for the quarterback and stop the run and all that stuff. So it looks like one of those two players. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is probably a little bit too similar to Josh Allen in playing style. So having two guys that kind of have the same style probably not a good idea on defense. You need to have two guys that can complement on defense on both ends of the line. So probably Hutchinson or Walker, one of those two. I really don't have any preference. I mean, I will say I do feel like for some reason that Hutchinson doesn't really feel that exciting as a prospect. It's not like, I mean, he does a lot of really good things, but he's not like, somebody's like, oh, wow, that's like, this is a next generational player or something. He just happens to be the best guy in the draft this year that can help the team. So, we'll see what happens as we get closer to the draft and then, who they look like they're going to pick. Well, as we get more rumors and stuff from sources and fans, we'll see what happens there. I think the Jags may try to trade back into the first round. I feel like they may try to get a wide receiver late first round, or potentially they may try to trade for a receiver still. Looks like maybe DK Metcalf may be on the trade block for the Seattle Seahawks as they begin a rebuilding period for that team. So I think potentially Metcalf, if he's on the trading block, I think the Jags should really try hard to trade for a player like that. That's a game-changing wide receiver. Somebody that can really change the game for a team. He's still got a lot of game-breaking speed. So I definitely expect a player like that to be available if possible. If not, they'll just try to draft a receiver in the first round or early second round, which is going to be tough because Trent Baalke doesn't really have a great track record of drafting wide receivers. So, we'll see what happens. Maybe Doug Peterson's got some input there that can help offset that lack of success drafting wide receivers for Baalke there. So, a lot of things still left to see what happens. We still got a couple of weeks for the NFL draft. You got about 3 weeks until the NFL draft in Las Vegas there. So, it should be exciting once we get around to that time. Definitely going to have the TV or the phone tuned in to the draft at 8 p.m. once it starts in 3 weeks from now. So, definitely looking forward to that, seeing all the excitement of the first round pick and seeing where the Jags go. So, we'll see what happens there. But, still feel like it's pretty early. But, as things change, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, mentioned how a quarter of the league doesn't have a first round draft pick. I mean, talk about my Niners. The defending Super Bowl champions don't have one, but they've basically said the draft doesn't exist to them. I don't know how long that can really continue. I find it interesting that they don't draft anybody and they can still stay under the cap. I don't know how the hell that works, but that's beside the point. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, there's 8 teams, so I mean, we'll get in more into the details of the draft as the weeks go on. We have other racing, of course, to cover here and other endeavors on our own end. And speaking of that, Josh, your sim segment, the way we generally close out the GSP, where I know you've been busy with work and been kind of jet setting around. So now that you're back at home base, what are your plans here as we get towards like Easter and all for some of the racing you'll be doing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going back to kind of normal lifestyle looks like, and this weekend, the schedule is for, well, not my schedule per se, but the IndyCar and iRacing schedule. On IndyCar iRacing schedule, there's the IndyCar fixed series at Auto Club Speedway, which I talked about in the last show. That's always a fun track to talk or to race on. Using the high line, using the slipstream, the draft at that racetrack. Trying to get runs in the corners and being able to hang it on the outside, the middle. Make up a lot of momentum, and then if you got to run, you can go dive down to the bottom and make a pass. So that's definitely one of my favorite tracks to race on in the Indy cars. So definitely going to be on that. I think the Open Series is at Long Beach, so might try that out this weekend. And then also on the NASCAR side, I think they're racing, or I mean, they mirror their real life schedule and think it's going to be Martinsville this weekend. So maybe a Cup at Martinsville potentially, or Xfinity series at Martinsville. Potentially one of those cars. I always enjoyed playing Martinsville in NRO3 back in the day, and even some of the old EA Sports games on console and PC. So iRacing at Martinsville is always fun too, and get a lot of that short track racing action on the sim this weekend. So yeah, probably spend a little bit of time sim racing, and then I'll try to let you know when I stream that, of course. And then you can always, as always, follow that at Twitch TV/usailor2. Go watch the streams, and still have the Daytona 500 stream from a few months ago now, which already seems like a long time ago, even though it really wasn't. But still have that up there if you want to watch super speedway racing. But hopefully have some new content up there soon, and then can have watch the IndyCar stuff, and potentially some short track stuff at Martinsville. So always glad to be back home, and kind of resume normal life, and get back into all the regular routine and everything.
Absolutely. I mean, now on my end, it's trying to get back in a routine, even with stuff. Having these days off is actually nice for once. Getting ready for a new gig, so that'll be nice. Getting some new things, trying to go and fix some other stuff on other areas. It's always nice to reset. We're getting close to Easter. Um, it's time to reflect and kind of think of how what you've done with your year in a lot of ways, but then also what you're planning to do for the rest of the year. Um, I mean, you can follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can follow the Grip Strip Podcast at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter. And you can follow us on YouTube. The Grip Strip Podcast, of course, is on YouTube now. We've been uploading. Josh has been uploading the episodes here the last few weeks, so we're up there. If you want to watch us, see us instead of just hearing us on sound, you can go and watch us on YouTube at Grip Strip Podcast on YouTube. The Grip Strip Podcast you can find on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, and Stitcher and TuneIn. Probably others. I swear it probably is others, but I'm just, in regards to where we are. Basically, anywhere there's a podcast, you can find the Grip Strip Podcast. So that's it's cool. So we're glad to keep on doing this. We're on episode 108, and we're going to keep on going. A lot of racing to go here. NASCAR, of course, really doesn't take a break until Father's Day, so there'll be at least NASCAR talk here. We'll have football talk here as weeks go on towards the NFL draft. There's been so many crazy trades and pick whatever signings what's it called? Stefan Diggs just re-upped for another 496 after Buffalo, Buffalo, city of Buffalo gave a blank check to the Pagulas to make a new stadium. So big deal there. There's been a lot of trades. I mean, Green Bay, they're going to want to get a wide receiver. Some of these other teams, Kansas City, they've been making signings, but they traded away Tyreek Hill. Who's going to be their guy? There's a whole lot that's coming along here in the upcoming weeks. Does Miami go and decide because Mike McDaniel is their head coach? Do they go and take a shot with Jimmy Garoppolo? Even though they already have two quarterbacks in the room, or does some other 49er centric team, or like the Jets, you have Zach Wilson there, but you want to have a guy who's a capable backup. Maybe they make a move. Who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll talk all about that. We'll get into all the details from this week's races in NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar. You got MotoGP, Moto2, IMSA, Supercars, World Superbikes, Formula E. And then there will be more to talk about next week, too, along with who wins Masters, amongst other things, and see if I can continue this upward trend as we get towards the state tournament for bowling and for Josh's sim work, both in IndyCar at ACS and then also in Martinsville in the Cup car. See what we can do there. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for listening to the Grip Strip Podcast, and we'll see you next time.